Hey everybody, welcome back to Historians of the Movies podcast. I am your host and creator, Jason Herbert, and every single week we are talking about movies and the histories behind them. And this week, we're doing something a little different around here. I want for you to close your eyes and imagine the movies that you've watched however long you've lived, right? And imagine a world in which there are no Robin Hood pictures. Kind of hard to imagine, right? Considering especially that he might be the world's first superhero. He's definitely among them. So, I wanted today to talk about Robin Hood in film. And to do so, I brought on for you Amy S. Kaufman. She is a scholar. She has a PhD in medieval literature, and she writes about medieval history and myths and legends. And more specifically, she is the author of a brand new book, The Traitor of Sherwood Forest. It's a novel which takes place in the Robin Hood universe, and it is absolutely fantastic. There's some real head-turning stuff that goes on in this book. So I invited Amy on to talk not only about her book, but also the history of Robin Hood, where he comes from, how that story has changed over time, and of course, our favorite on-screen presentations of the Sherwood Bandits. So sit back and relax, because Robin Hood in film drops now on Historians of the Movies podcast. I have a confession. I took my day off at work today. I was like, I'm going to talk to Amy. I'm not going to work at all. I mean, I worked on Saturday, so it's fine. I'm still doing my thing. I've been looking forward to talking to you for a while, because like sometimes you talk to people when you do these pods, right? And you will line them up, and you're like, okay, hey, I'll talk to you, whatever. And it's like, it's not quite transactional, but it's like, oh, well, I'll see you in a month or whatever, right? And then you and I just kind of kept talking back and forth and stuff. I was like, oh, she's cool. I like her. And as you were just telling me off screen, you now live in North Florida, otherwise known as Canada. So
I wouldn't call it North Florida up here.
We just lost the Toronto market. They're like, no, it's not happening. Vancouver's gonna be like,
gone. Yeah, no.
All
of Canada just hung up.
So my first question is, can I come visit? And second question is, can I stay like indefinitely there?
You can visit. Canada is recruiting
is it
smart people to come up with
well, there goes that. What about
Actually, though, you said forestry, and I think that might be on the express entry list. I'm not sure.
Is that right?
The environmental stuff is really big out here in British Columbia.
That's all. You know what? Of course, I work. I'm rocking my Mountain Ute tribe. For anybody who's listening in right now, showing some love to the tribe. One of the many tribes I work with in my actual paying job. I actually had this conversation with my ex-wife a couple months ago when I was in Florida, and we're like, "Hey, if things go bad, what do we do?" And apparently, this conversation is happening all over America. So the two places we're like, all right, either Canada or Colombia, and I'm like, is it because they start with C? Like these are radically different places.
They are.
I'm like, fine, I guess. Where in Canada? Like Colombia, I'm like, all right, I can find that. Canada's big. There's a lot of Canada. How did you end up in Vancouver? You're in Vancouver, right?
Yes.
Okay. How did you end up there?
My husband got a job with EA. Which makes video games up here. He doesn't work with them anymore.
Look at me. Of course I know who EA is.
Sorry. Well, maybe your listeners.
I need the Madden guy to do the voiceover.
Ironically, though, he actually hates video games. I'm the one who plays video games, but
he
took the job.
That's funny, because I hate history, but go on. So I don't like books.
Hey.
Anyway, so you're saying, all right, so how long have you guys been in Vancouver, though?
8 years. We got our citizenship about a year and a half ago.
Oh wow! What, did you keep your American citizenship too,
yeah,
or do you have to throw off all allegiances?
No, I kept my citizenship. Although the U.S. is the only country that makes you pay taxes even after you leave. So,
well, what are they going to do? Come up and collect and then kick you out? Because apparently that's what we do now anyway.
Yeah, probably.
I don't. Okay, well, that's fair. I've actually been doing a lot of podcasts with people in Canada recently. I don't know why that is. Do you know Rachel Hope Cleaves? She's
No.
a good friend of mine. She's been on a podcast. She wrote this book about food and desire in like the early Americas and stuff like that. She
Ooh.
lives in Victoria. Is
Oh
that
yeah,
right?
it's close-ish. You need to take a
Yeah,
boat.
she was telling
But
me it's great. You have to like take a boat to
yeah.
go over. It's like she's like it's. I'm like, oh, you're close to like Bellingham. You can go to Trader Joe's. She's like, actually, no.
Take her probably 6 hours,
That's what she
including
said.
the boat. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was like, what?
But that book sounds amazing. I'll have to listen to that one. I
Oh,
love
it's
good
a.
books.
Oh, you know what we did? We did the pod on the movie Eat, Pray, Love.
Oh, right.
Um,
I read the
I
book.
did.
I've not seen the movie.
I did not like the movie at all, and like that happens sometimes, right? Like you don't have to like the movie to come out and talk
Right.
about it. But like Rachel's amazing. I'm one of her biggest fans. She's just a lovely human being. But I felt like the Julia Roberts character in that movie was just totally obnoxious. You know, maybe.
That book and that movie caught some criticism.
Well, the whole idea of like this is upper like, oh, I guess I'll just go to Bali for a while. It's like,
Right. Right.
oh well, poor you. Whatever. Anyway, let's talk about you. Let's talk about yourself. You want to introduce yourself to our fair audience, to
Sure.
ye old audience.
Ye old audience.
Thank
I'm
you.
Amy S. Kaufman. I used to teach medieval literature, classical and medieval literature, and I was, this is my dirty secret, I was an Arthurian scholar, not a Robin Hood scholar.
What? Oh my God, you have no idea. I'm already enlisting you to come back for another pod. So
Okay. Yeah, so most of my scholarship was on Arthurian legend and then also medievalism in popular culture. So the way that the Middle Ages are viewed and used, mostly politically in popular culture. So I wrote about women in Arthurian legend and in Chaucer's Fablio, and I wrote about medievalism and popular culture. And then at a certain point, so unlike a lot of former academics, I didn't always want to be an academic. I always wanted to write novels. And I thought, oh, I'll be really practical and I'll get a job as a professor because that'll give me loads of time.
And it'll pay well.
And it'll pay well and be super stable.
People listen to me because I have a PhD. That's especially my family.
Yeah, I'll get respect. Right. So after
you moved
10 years of being a professor, I realized, the stack of unfinished novels was getting bigger and bigger. And I just decided I would quit. I would quit and I would go write. So that's what I'm doing. So I am coming out with my first novel in 2 weeks and 1 day. And that's it. Beautiful.
I have it. Do you have a physical copy yet?
I have the ARC, which you have. I do not have the final copies.
This is the far. Okay, so for those of you listening, the ARC, we're not talking about Indiana Jones. It's another podcast with other people. The ARC is the advanced reader copy, which these are like my little things. I love these because you don't get these unless you're important. The press is sending them to us.
That's right.
And Julissa sent this to me.
Oh, good.
Anyway, yes. So you've got this, and the book is coming out. Well, by the time this pod comes out, the book will be out. So, okay.
It's a Robin Hood retelling based on the medieval ballads.
I know. I'm very excited to talk about this. And so here's the thing. This is the second historical novel we've kind of promoted on the pod, which is different than, say, a lot of traditional books with many words that you see behind me. Because we can't give away what's in it. So, because that would negate the point, but we will talk about the hook and all the ideas behind it. So, I'm very excited because I think this book is really, really cool. And like, it just hooks you in. I was trying to think about the appropriate archery analogy here. And I'm like, it's right on target. It's a bullseye. It's a bullseye of historical. Yeah. So bad. If you're still listening, we apologize. So yeah, okay. So I have so many questions for you. First and foremost, how long since you retired from professing now?
Oh gosh, it's been about 8 years, 8 or 9 years. Yeah.
What's that like? Like going, like leaving academia and going into this other world of normal
When
people?
you have been in it as long as I was, it's like a weird decompression process.
Uh huh.
I actually wrote an academic book during that
Hmm.
time.
Oh, we're gonna talk about that one
Wrote
too.
Okay. I wrote some public writing, some
Hmm.
history stuff. I was kind of trying to find my way. I think I felt like I had an obligation to academia long after I left.
Yeah.
And I kept kind of putting out this stuff. So it's weird, it's almost like a cult.
Absolutely, it's like a cult.
The way that you view the world just changes and your priorities change. It's so hard to explain to anybody who hasn't been in it. But my caveat is that I have had great experiences in academia, and mostly that's the people. I had great mentors, I had great colleagues. Arthurian studies people are some of the best people. I mean, they're just
Mm.
warm and generous, and they boost each other, which I think is unusual.
Do you all have collections of swords at your houses? Is that what happens?
I I have a sword.
Do you really?
I do.
Do
Yeah.
it. Of course you do.
Uh,
Uh,
yeah. Other people have more swords. Most of the Arthurians I know have great collections of scotch, more than swords.
Scotch and swords. That's just
Scotch
a
and
great.
swords.
That's just
Yeah.
a great combination. Like to have at a faculty meeting is what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
Yeah. Well, there aren't a lot of us on faculties, so you
No,
don't
because
have
you're
to
all
worry so
malicious.
much
But go
about
on.
that.
I
Yeah,
guess.
because Arthurian studies actually until and Robin Hood studies, as a matter of fact, until really recently, they were not seen as serious scholarship. So it's only recently that people were allowed to start talking about that.
So I've got actually a few. As HATM has gone on, I've collected like you swords. I've collected friends. And actually and learned about this whole duality amongst medievalists and this that and the other,
Mhm.
which is frankly amazing to me, Amy, because the thing that becomes more and more apparent to me is how many people contemporarily, and I think maybe what we'll talk about today is even throughout time, have based their understandings on the past via pop culture.
Mhm.
you know so why wouldn't you take Arthurian legends seriously? Why wouldn't you take the Robin Hood story, right? I almost started singing Brian Adams to you right now. I
This is
mean,
this is actually the Brian Adams song is so funny because I'm bad at social media, and when I started having to promote the book, I finally learned how to do an Instagram story.
okay.
And because I don't like loud noises, I don't use Instagram with sound. But I realized that you could put a song in. So I did an Instagram story, and I put the Brian Adams song in, to promote the book. And I immediately got like comments and messages from people like, "Oh, I love that song." And that was the day I realized that other people use Instagram with sound.
Oh yeah. I
They
don't.
actually know what song is playing. I have no idea.
I keep the sound off of things, not because I don't, but not because I don't like loud noises, but because I'm an old,
Yeah,
and
well,
I'm
yeah.
like,
I mean, that's
I'm
the real
just
reason,
so
Jason. I wasn't going to say that out loud.
angry. Just like,
Yeah,
although I was
it's
just
too
talking.
much.
Speaking of loud voices, and we'll get into this in a sec, but like I was just having this conversation with Dan McClellan, who does like Bible history stuff like that. We were just talking because he's a fellow member of Gen X about how I've discovered recently. I was okay. So the other night I was watching I poured myself a glass of wine and I put on MTV's Unplugged with Alice in Chains, right? And I fully went full on. I'm like, this is life. I can do what I want. And like now there's like all these Gen Z kids who are, if you scroll through Instagram or TikTok, they're all singing like Man in the Box or like
No.
they're, oh yeah, they're
No.
singing Alice in Chains. It's like and I'm here for it. I'm like, I'm Gen X. I don't care.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes
So
sense because when we were growing up, like Zeppelin and the Doors and the Dead, those were all really big, and it must have been so strange to to people older than us. We're like, this
I
old thing,
know,
you broke that out again? Yeah.
I know
But back to
exactly.
your question,
Yes.
which I think I remember,
Do we have a
uh,
question?
it was why does scholarship snub popular
Yeah.
culture? Yeah, and I think it's just part of the general idea that academics are supposed to be above loving things.
Mm.
I feel like younger scholars are breaking that. I actually wrote a little article about it with Arthurian studies, how, we come into Arthurian studies because we fall in love with something Arthurian. We're
Sure.
attached to it. And then learning how to do scholarship is the process of distancing yourself from that passion and that love. You're supposed to learn to hate it. Not hate it, but you're supposed to learn to, have it at a distance and
You
not
can't have
feel
attachments.
emotionally. Yeah, you can't be attached.
No, I feel like didn't we learn this from the Jedi Code? Like their anti-attachment stuff was what allowed the Sith to rise, and
Right.
you know most of us can probably name a few Dark Lords of the Sith who are faculty members right now.
Just a couple.
I guess, right? No, I totally get it, right? And it's almost like, no, that's a fairy tale. Like what? Like that's too. I need to go write about the mechanics of basket weaving in southern Scotland in 1412.
Which,
It's like,
which,
no,
if that's your thing, if you're super into basket weaving, no
it's nobody's
complaints.
thing. Nobody likes that.
Yeah.
So, but okay, so let's talk about this though. So, in addition, you study all this time on really. I mean, I guess we can call it pop culture, literature of its era and
Mm-hmm.
such, right? Why? And now here we are in 2025. You've got a book, a new take on the Robin Hood story. What do we call this? The Robin Hood fable, the myth? What's the
Legend. I usually
legend?
say
Okay,
legend. Yeah. Yeah. So I made a medievalism.
right. So why did you want to like, hey, let me write a story about Robin Hood or a story in the Robin Hood universe? And also, were you not scared crapless about like jumping into this pantheon of stories? Right? I mean,
So, okay. Yeah, I'll answer that in reverse. The funny thing is, I am scared crapless now, but
right.
I did not realize that this book was going to sell. It's very hard to break into fiction writing. So I actually have a novel I wrote before this that got me an agent. We went on sub, and after about a year, we decided it wasn't getting anything, or it wasn't getting enough. It was like either too literary or too historical. It was sort of in between. Um, so we pulled it. But while that was on sub, I told my agent I had this idea about a Robin Hood book I wanted to write.
Mm.
And she said, "That sounds great. Go for it." So I wrote it. She loved it. We put it out and it sold in a couple of weeks. Like it was gone immediately. So there wasn't time for me to have fear and regret the way that that I maybe have now. It was just, I'm going to try this completely weird thing. It's the pandemic. My first book is out. It felt very low stakes. And now it feels slightly higher stakes.
No, like I've read the book, and like not only is it out, it's good. Like
Thank you.
you can actually read the book. It's like there were like no seriously. Okay, so and the thing that I really dig, we'll get into this, was like it's such a really different twist on this.
Mhm.
And in fact, when the press first reached out to me about promoting this, I was like, oh, this is like I thought this was like a history book at first until they sent it to me, and it feels like this story feels so visceral and real. I'm like, oh, you know what I mean?
Oh, good.
It feels like I got to like go back and watch this stuff right from the sideline as it's unfolding. Is the way that the best way I could describe this. I don't want to give the book away. We'll talk
That's
about
so
from 40,000.
gratifying to hear.
Yeah, it's really really cool, and it's you know I guess all the stuff's out. Taking this the story of Robin Hood through a woman's perspective, really through a feminist voice. I thought was really cool, especially as this big straight white dude hillbilly, right? Because it's not traditionally the kind of stuff that I would read, right?
Mhm.
And I just found myself just plunged into it. I'm like, let's go, right? It's such a great story. Um, let's backtrack though for a second. Let's put on our thinking history hats or whatever. Um, Robin Hood himself, and you talk about this at the end of the book. Was Robin Hood a real dude? Like, where does this guy come from?
That's a difficult question.
You have
So
6 hours to respond, or at least until my tea is cold.
6 hours. So no one knows. And the reason no one knows is that by the time Robin Hood starts appearing in texts and records that we have, he's already a huge legend across England. So much so that every time somebody commits a crime, like, well, not every time, many times someone will commit a crime and they'll write their names down, or someone will write their name down as Robin Hood. There are Robin Hood caves all across of England. Everybody claims a Robin Hood, like Scotland and Wales and many parts of England are claiming a Robin Hood. By the time we get stuff in the 14th century in the chronicles and references in literature, he's already famous through the oral tradition. So it's very difficult to pin down whether or not there was an actual real Robin Hood. The records are scarce. Now, there are scholars who have theories, and they all contradict each other as they will. And they're all based on, like one little record or one scrap of evidence. But the first chronicle reference we have is to Robert Hood and Little Johann as famous outlaws in 1283 is where they're placed. And they're in a chronicle. It's a Scottish chronicler, and chronicles in the Middle Ages are sort of like history. But the thing is, they're not reliable. They don't have a scientific definition of history in the way that we claim to do today. There's very often legends are mixed with fact. So there are a lot of kings who used to have chronicles commissioned that trace their lineage down to the fall of Troy, or trace their lineage to King Arthur. So a chronicle can be many things. It can be history, it can be propaganda. But in this case, that's the first chronicle mention that puts Robin Hood or Robert Hood in a time and place, and that's 1283, which is not where we see him in modern stories. Those place him back at the beginning of the 13th century under King John, but all of the medieval texts place him under King Edward.
When Robin Hood first appears in the historical text, right, and I'm guessing, am I wrong, Amy? Is it mostly an oral tradition because lack of literacy rates at the time? Do we think, or like what? Why does it take a while for him to hit?
Mostly oral tradition, and that's an assumption. Again, we know there was an oral tradition because we have written tradition in some cases complaining about the oral tradition. There's another chronicle in 1440 that complains about how the peasants love Robin Hood and Little John and never stopped talking about them, even though they were violent criminals. So we know there were ballads, there were plays, there were songs, but we don't have a record of them until it's mostly scholars and church clerics who write things down in the Middle Ages. So it's not necessarily the literacy rate so much as that the people who would be into Robin Hood at that time weren't writing and weren't reading. That's not what they did, right? He was popular with the peasants. He was popular with common people.
I can only imagine like a 14th century version of like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Be like, no, he was bad.
That's pretty much what this guy is. He's like, these ridiculous people. He's a, absolute murderer.
Yeah. All right. So for those of us who grew up, my first exposure to Robin Hood, Disney, Fox, right? And then before, greatest soundtrack ever made with Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. That's not true. It's singles, but whatever. Can we talk about the early incarnations? Like, I think we all kind of have a 21st century understanding of Robin Hood through our own pop culture, but how is he different at that time? Was he steal from the rich, give to the poor? Because Marion doesn't really appear in the early chronicles, right?
No, there are huge differences. He steals from the rich. He really doesn't give to the poor.
That's cool.
He's a classic trickster, right? He's there to overturn authority. There's no Maid Marian. Instead, the medieval Robin Hood is devoted to the Virgin Mary, which is many medieval heroes are. You also see that a lot in Arthurian legend. It's kind of a convention that he will pray to the Virgin Mary to guard him and protect him and devote everything that he does to her, even when he's murdering monks.
Bad monks.
So we've got those two things. He is temperamental, angry. He and Little John are on much more of an even footing in the legends. They often get into fights, sometimes fist fights. They often rescue each other, and Robin is can be an overheated jerk. He does really stupid things. He gets captured. He yells at people. He's a huge flirt. There's a scene that I've recreated in the book where there's a insinuation that he sort of gets with the sheriff's wife. So he's not a loyal lover. He's not a perfect hero. He's not charitable. He's also not loyal to the king, which I think is important. When Robin Hood moves from being King Edward's subject to, in the 16th century, they start to say he fought with King Richard in the Crusades, which is not part of his medieval history. And they sort of use him to reestablish King Richard's authority in the later legends. And that's what we're used to seeing, right? Like
Right,
even the
absolutely.
Disney Fox, right? Oh, we got to put the good king back on the throne because kings aren't bad. It's just a bad king that's bad. Whereas the medieval Robin Hood is against nobility as a premise. There's even a scene in the Jest of Robin Hood, sort of the long poem from the Middle Ages, where he falls in with King Edward and goes to join his court. And then, this is not in the book, so it's not a spoiler. He spends a year at court, and he spends, I think, £100. They use outrageous amounts of money in the medieval book. He spends £100 trying to sort of build up his reputation and build up a following. And in the end of a year, he runs out of money, and the only people left are Little John and Will, who were with him to begin with. So there's this really maudlin scene where Robin Hood is watching these young men do archery, and he's remembering his time in the Greenwood, and he's thinking about, how that was real. And what he has at court is fake and corrupt, and so he leaves, and Edward hunts him for the rest of his life. And so the whole story is kind of a parable about how nobility is this kind of empty and corrupt thing that one should not want to join the aristocracy because it's hollow, and real loyalty is to be found among your brothers in the forest.
Are there common themes throughout the? I mean, we're talking about 1,000 years worth of stuff here, but like, are as time has moved forward all the way up till 2025, you talk a little bit about how the powers to be, the writers and so forth have evolved these storylines, moving them back and forth to fix certain social hierarchies or support institutions. But what are the themes, the common themes here? It's not just the fact that he's with the guys. Steals from the rich. Like, what else is there? Is it always in the woods? Like, what are the themes over time?
I think they change. There are generations of Robin Hoods. I would say that in the Middle Ages, anti-corruption, loyalty, those are the big themes. And then when he's gentrified, he becomes a symbol of right rule, of stability, of reestablishing the English order. He was used by the Puritans in the English Civil War.
Really?
To be anti-corruption. Yeah. And in the 18th and 19th century, he's a figure of nationalism for Britain, but he's also a rejection of the Industrial Revolution, right? So their nature becomes much more prominent. When he's gentrified in the 16th century, the forest becomes a temporary space, right? Like, that life is not important. What's important is that he gets back his earldom. By the way, they named him, I think it was Anthony Munday in the 16th century, named him the Earl of Huntingdon, decided that Robin Hood was the Earl of Huntingdon. But there's a theory that he picked the name because of the word hunt, not realizing that this was a real earldom. And then it's stuck like through centuries. Anyway, I think modern Robin Hood, although it's changing a little bit in the last 2 decades, I think the 20th century Robin Hood is a symbol that we're familiar with, right? Of being against greed, of being against corrupt authority, but not completely against authority, and of true love, right? the love of Marion is
The
really
Marion
important.
thing becomes right. Yeah.
Yeah. And Marion is also introduced in the 16th century when Robin is gentrified. She didn't exist before, but you can't have, after the Protestant Reformation, you can't have a Robin Hood devoted to the Virgin Mary.
I was
Not
just thinking
happening.
about how the Puritans must have reacted to the idea of Robin like praying to,
Yeah, no, out the window. No,
yeah,
Mary. Yeah.
not so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe like our current understands, and I'm actually not kidding when I say this. I must have watched Prince of Thieves like 100 times in the '90s. Man, it had a moment and stuff like that. But doesn't it kind of captured all of these ideas, right? Of like anti-authority, but not quite, because he wants to establish because he fought in the
He wants his
Crusades.
land. He wants his land back. I mean, the Robin Hood who has been kicked out of the aristocracy is something we've lived longer with than the original Robin Hood, who was never a part of it.
Mm-hmm. And it's like there's a sense of like, okay, almost like he's going native into an expression, right? Whereas he's joining the boys in the woods. Like this group of merry men is not his people, right? This is a group he just kind of takes on, decides he's going to lead.
Because he's born to lead, because he's an aristocrat.
Oh, see, they're so sly with all of this.
It's very cynical to me. What has happened to Robin Hood is very cynical to me.
Really? Okay, well, let's get into this, because this is ostensibly a film podcast. At least it was years ago. I don't even know. Let's talk about the portrayals on screen, because again, like we were talking earlier, so much of what we understand about Robin Hood is informed. I wasn't really reading a lot of Robin Hood fan fiction when I was 14 from
Right.
From 1612. What are your favorite portrayals of Robin Hood on screen?
It's funny. Penguin is running a giveaway today, and on Instagram they said, tell us your favorite Robin Hood movie and you'll win. And it's actually split between my two favorite Robin Hood movies, which are the Fox, the cartoon Fox,
it has to be,
and Men in Tights. Which, is basically a response film to Prince of Thieves, right? It comes out 2 years later. It's making fun of it. And I watched it recently. It doesn't hold up in every way in the modern era, but it's hilarious. And the inside jokes in there are just fantastic. So yeah, those are my two favorite films. I think you can hardly beat Cary Elwes as Robin Hood unless you're a cartoon fox.
Well, yeah, right. Well, there are foxes on the cover of your book. Why Elwes though? Like, what in your mind's eye? What does Robin Hood look like?
Oh, okay. So I do know exactly what he looks like in my mind's eye, because it's not him.
Okay.
I was watching Slow Horses about a year ago for the first time. Right. And oh no, I can't remember if it's James Loudon or John Loudon, the actor.
Oh, okay. Either one.
Yeah,
Jay Loudon.
J. Loudon.
Right,
he popped on screen and I went, oh shit.
Is that who it looks like?
His face. Yeah, exactly. Exactly what it looks like to me.
I'm Googling him right now.
All right, there's a picture if you Google with his hair slicked back. Don't look at that. Well, doesn't look anything like him.
That's just Gary Oldman is all I see in my images. Robin was really old. Okay, Jack Loudon.
Jack, thank you.
Okay, all right. Oh, okay. Oh,
yeah. So that's how I imagine his face, like maybe taller. But yeah, the face really hit me because it's very hard. I have these deep descriptions of people, and they're very clear in my head, and most of them I can't picture as anyone famous or anyone I know. But when I saw his face, I thought, well, that's exactly what I pictured. I needed Robin to be attractive, obviously, but also slightly dark, right? Slightly mischievous that might border on darkness.
Yeah, like 6'2", former academic. I get it. Yeah, totally. Has a beard, balding, lives with regret. I know what you're talking about.
Hey, you'd make a great Little John.
What? I don't want to be Little John.
Little John is my favorite character in that book. I hope
Little John doesn't get the girl.
I hope that I fleshed out Little John in that book, because while I was writing, I really fell into his character. I really enjoyed his character. He gets short shrift in everything, but he is, in the medieval ballads, he's one of the strongest characters.
Why don't that see that would be interesting to me, would be to see a story about Robin Hood through Little John's eyes too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's always the idea, if you take any kind of film, right, that might be about a character or two characters or whatever, and then take said film and then shift the focus to where the story is actually about the side character and like all these things that are going on. Like, oh, my two friends just are annoying. They can't figure out if they're in love or not. You know, we just did the cutting edge last night. Like, oh god, skate it off. Somebody on Twitter last night said, just fuck it off already. You know, it's like, just get it out. You know,
I tried to do that with his point of view in this book. You know, it's through Jane's lens.
Yes.
But I'm hoping that you get an exploration of all the characters, especially the ones that seem to be flat in modern movies.
I want to actually ask you about something a bit more serious, though, which, and you've written about this before. And as I started to familiarize myself with your writing, this became really, really important to me, which is the idea of how medieval imagery and maybe the memory of this, and we see this so much with the memory of like the old South, the lost cause bullshit in the United States. The idea of the medieval past, how it's been used, been weaponized to commit these horrible things, whether it's Islamophobia, whether it's murder or warfare or, white supremacy, other acts of violence, things like that. Can you talk a little bit about how, like, memory, like people have used maybe images of Robin Hood or the Arthurian legends or any number of things, Knights Templar, maybe, I don't know.
All of it. Where do I start?
Yeah. Again, 6 hours till I finish my cup of tea.
Yeah, if I'm thinking Robin Hood specifically,
yeah.
The uses are less egregious usually than something like King Arthur, which has been tied to, acts of conquest and nationalism. I think there was some Robin Hood imagery with Brexit. And the Robin Hood of the early 20th century films, there's an emphasis on him being Anglo-Saxon, which even though he's, well, I guess he is actually fighting Muslims, right? Because the whole idea of him being a crusader and that making him a hero, like that's supposed to amp up his heroism, is the fact that he takes part in the Crusades. That's what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, it's counterintuitive to us now, right? I hope, well, to us, to you and me.
I hope so.
We wouldn't associate the Crusades with something positive. I mean, even medieval people were very conflicted about the Crusades. Even medieval British and French people, there's poetry describing like the horrible slaughter and the waste of life. But
Amy, haven't I even seen like on like Pete Hegseth's bicep that he's got like this Crusade-esque kind of stuff?
Yeah. They're super. Well, people who are white supremacists are super into the Crusades for the same reason that we find it appalling that you would say someone's a hero because they went on Crusades, right? Because for someone like Hegseth, he sees that as the sort of uber war between Christianity and Islam, right? Yeah. And that has become the rally, that has been the rallying cry of most of the right, for a decade now at least. Imagining themselves as crusaders. And I think the administration we're dealing with now is a little more complicated. Hegseth is one part of it, and his medievalism is one part of it. And that's combining with this weird techno-fascism that I haven't quite gotten a handle on yet. You would think it would be the opposite, but it's still white supremacy, just in a different flavor. Although, who was it? Peter Thiel made a medieval reference recently. I can't remember what it was. Crap, I'm going to have to Google it. But they see themselves as sort of the ancestors of this medieval war between Christianity and Islam, and you see it everywhere in all of their propaganda. Uh, and what they don't realize, and actually, and I wrote about this 1,000 years ago, um, ISIS, the Islamic State, uses Crusades imagery too, just from the other side. So they actually like use a lot of the same rhetoric in
Defense of
their
the Holy Land
propaganda.
kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So this like civilizational war between Christianity and Islam. Yeah, that's it. Travels fast on the internet. It's appealing to young and disaffected men who feel like they don't have, anything to fight for. They want to be heroic. So on both sides, they have been recruited in with that kind of second crusade. Well, not second crusade, modern crusade rhetoric.
Yeah, I see a real like hyper masculinity, or like I don't consider what they do to be masculine, right? But that's how it's being framed. My conceptual masculinity is completely removed from that. But that sure seems this machismo nonsense wrapped up in this nostalgia.
Well, and I think that's part of the misconception of the Middle Ages too, right? Is
Yeah.
to say that there's this kind of impenetrable masculinity that existed in the Middle Ages. Men were men and women knew their place, and there was no disruption of gender in any way, which is completely false if you look at the Middle Ages. But it's a myth that exists to kind of propel modern myths about masculinity. If we say it has always been a certain way, then we believe it's somehow natural, which it's not, I should say.
Well, I want to go on record for the people listening right now. While we were talking about Hexeth a moment ago, I did flex, and Amy's here. My biceps are bigger than Pete Hexeth's by far, and certainly bigger than Peter Thiel's. So there's that.
I need to look at that Peter Thiel.
Yeah, Google
like
Peter Thiel biceps
for myself. Peter Thiel biceps,
or not. JD Vance's biceps. It's so bad, right? JD Vance's eyeliner to the medieval men wear, but it does remind me
that were the biggest problem.
Well, there seems to be also this idea of not only of masculinity in the Middle Ages, but the lack of women, right, amongst these stories. Okay, we talk about how Marion is like a latter injection into this, but these really are like stories of like this male dominated universe, if you will. It's like we don't see women in these stories, do we? I mean,
in the original Robin Hood stories, we don't. Yeah, we don't. But we do almost everywhere else. Well, and one of the things I really wanted to do with the Traitor of Sherwood Forest was sort of tell really grounded women's stories. I think we get a lot of medieval historical fiction where you have like the one exceptional woman who hates weaving and wields a sword. And I love sword fighting women. Like I will eat that up. But that wasn't what I wanted to write here, because I feel like that narrative says that you have to be born special or born wealthy or born, exceptional in order to have a life worth talking about. And I don't think that's true. I think, ordinary women's stories have gotten buried. But they had rich lives. They had professions that they contributed to the economy. People disappear those stories, I think, because they think it was so oppressive. But that doesn't mean women weren't living and doing things.
No, and I think that one of the cool things about what this book allows you to do from a historical perspective is kind of envision in these spaces that where we don't say necessarily have as much historical documentation, right? Where we talk about like writing from the ground up, things like that. Because people, of course, they're writing about kings, they're writing about swordsmen and things like that. But what they weren't writing about were the men and women who were just living their lives, trying to do the best they could, sometimes getting put in bad positions, right? And then having to overcome those obstacles. Which leads me to talk about the book specifically, because I don't want to give it away, because that's not what we want. I want people to read this book.
Yeah.
We're talking about this story of Robin Hood through the lens of Jane Crow. Can you talk a little bit about what this book, can you give us a synopsis of why this book is different and what you're trying to do with this book? What is this book about?
It's a retelling, but I sometimes call it an untelling. Ooh. Where I'm trying to strip away everything we think we know about Robin Hood. And I I, Jane is a character who came into my head before I really decided what I was doing with her. But one thing as I was writing it that she's a great lens for is coming in with some of the myths about Robin Hood, that he's a great hero, that he fights for the poor, that he's chivalrous and courteous and all those things. And having that sort of stripped away through Jane. So the modern reader sort of gets to experience what she experiences. She gets to see what it really is behind the legend. But also, this is, it's not an agenda book, but it sort of expresses some anxiety that I have about our celebrity culture and making social change. It sort of disrupts the idea that you need a hero to swoop in and save you, right? Because what gets revealed as Jane is going on adventures with Robin and learning all this stuff is that change is really made through a network of people that you don't see, who aren't getting a lot of accolades, who aren't getting the credit, like Little John. And that real social change requires that kind of cooperation. And it doesn't always result in celebrity, and that sometimes whoever is at the head of a movement, sort of taking all the fame and all the energy, is maybe getting in the way of stuff getting done when their ego gets in the way.
No, so here's the cool thing about this, right? Which is that I almost feel like there's a humanization of Robin,
Yeah.
because you strip away like the celebrity aspect of like, Jane comes as it's like it's Robin, right? But ultimately it's just this guy, right? And he's got his own motives for the things that he does, and they're not always pure. And he's not necessarily this great and wonderful human being. And that's kind of in my mind the story of like humanity. It's like I feel like sometimes when we get as scholars, we get into writing these narratives. Like no, like I think we need to revel in the fact that humans are these incredibly complicated people who are capable of great acts of kindness, but also selfishness, and could be a first-rate bastard.
Yeah, and I think medieval people were a little actually more mature than we are
Yeah.
when it comes to their heroes, because even though Robin was flawed in the medieval legend, he was still a hero. And he's still a hero in my book, even if, his flaws are exposed and things don't always go to plan. You can still make change and be heroic, even if you're not perfect. And medieval people really embraced their flawed and tragic heroes, whereas we sort of purity test them. I think we might have something to learn if we look back, right, and see heroes as human beings, and see people who make change as human beings and activists and all that stuff.
All right. Well, as people are going to be reading this book, we are going to go ahead and assume that you were going to be contacted by no less than 17 film studios to produce this film, and I will be involved in the all of that. So here's our question. I sent to you last night, so hopefully you've had a chance to think about this. I didn't want to put you on the spot. This is your film. People are reading this book and need to mentally encapsulate who is who. Why don't you introduce to us a few of the main characters and who you would cast as them in your film, Traitor of Sherwood Forest?
I'll admit I had a hard time with this.
We're here for the tough questions here.
Yeah, I know. This
they all look like Peter Thiel. I got it.
No.
Even Jane.
We know Jack Loudon is Robin Hood.
Okay, Jack Loudon is Robin Hood. Okay.
I had a hard time with Jane because I describe her as plain and ordinary, and they're probably going to cast like Scarlett Johansson or like Keira Knightley or something. But maybe she's way too gorgeous, but maybe like Rose Leslie or someone with that sort of look. Yeah.
I was thinking Emma Stone.
Too refined.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
I mean, Rose Leslie is gorgeous, but
yeah,
so that would be interesting, because then I would have two Scottish leads, and Scotland really likes to associate themselves with Robin Hood. So,
okay.
So that would be super subversive. And then I'm really stumped on a lot of them, but if we could go really broad with the casting, like not have to stick with what they would look like, I feel like David Harewood could pull off the Sheriff of Nottingham.
Really? Okay.
David Harewood, he was Tuck in the BBC Robin Hood.
Right.
And he was in Supergirl. he was the best thing about Supergirl. He plays Jean Sean, who is sometimes a Martian.
It happens.
But I feel like he could do it. And for my prioress, I thought Indira Varma would be a great prioress. Like it's sort of intense and penetrating. Yeah. But also like now I'm kind of picking just my favorite.
No, I just saw her at a show. Is it Obsession on Netflix? She's
I haven't seen that.
With Richard Armitage. Who I think would fit really well in the universe.
So he was Yves Gisborne in the BBC Robin Hood.
Right. So
yeah, I don't know where I would put him though.
He's older now. He's older and more like, I don't quite know where to put him.
I don't know where to put him. Yeah, there's a lot of young people running around in my book, ironically.
That's what they do because they have energy. They don't sit around on their
they
phones
run around and
looking at Alice in Chains videos.
Yeah.
So, all right, director. Who's directing this film?
Could I have Greta Gerwig? I mean, it's Dreamcast, right?
It makes so much sense. Yeah, of course you're going to Greta. No one will say no.
You can't say no.
Greta, boy, she's good too.
Yeah.
She's really good. I'd like to see what she could do with action set pieces too, because we haven't really seen her do. I mean, some of the stuff that she did with like Barbie was fun, but like action scenes would be.
Yeah, but also she's good with those those shadowed characters.
Well, she's good at pulling that stuff out.
Yeah. I did have a little interest from Hollywood right off the bat, but I don't think they knew what the book was.
Right.
So, I think most people think Robin Hood and they think like big, epic war, crusades.
Right.
And this is a quiet book in a lot of ways. There is action, but it's sort of darker and slightly psychological. So I'm hoping when it's out and people know what the story is, maybe they'll be interested again. We'll see.
All right. Well, you've completed your Robin Hood book. We can say your Robin Hood book. It's not a Robin Hood book. It's a book about Jane, but it's your Jane Crow book. What's next? Are you going to return to Arthur? What are you going to do?
I just read Lev Grossman's The Bright Sword, which is brilliant. And I like many Arthurians, I have a partially finished Arthurian novel on some file somewhere, but I don't know. He did such a fascinating reimagining of it that I'm not sure I can pick it up now. Not for a while. It's really, really interesting. I don't know if you know about it, but it's set after Arthur's death. Yeah, It's fascinating. And anyway, I won't say too much about it, but it's very good. I'm not going to Arthur anytime soon. Part of me feels like I was so close to it, that it's hard to extrapolate the scholar brain from the writer brain.
Sure.
Where I was more able to do that now. But I have two really different things that I'm working on. One is set in the 90s in Florida. And then another one is about Eleanor of Aquitaine. So,
okay. All right.
And it's another kind of side view of a famous person. So we'll see. We'll see which one gets picked up.
Amy, I'm going to beg you to come back on and do, because there's no shortage of Arthur films too. Like we're going to.
True. Yeah, that's true.
Did you see what was the one? There's one that I really, really love for no reason at all. It's Legend of the Sword. Do you know this one? With Charlie Hunnam as King Arthur.
I did not watch that one.
One so
I think it came out right when I was quitting, and I was like, I do not have to go watch this film.
Oh my gosh! All right,
I had quit.
This is perfect.
You know what? I should go back and watch it. But I seem to remember like it's kind of a very like bro film.
Yes, and that's the reason why we need your feminist voice on this. Well, I need to have a bro. I mean, I'm already the bro of the pot, but whatever.
Yeah,
but then also another bro. I'm the big king. I guess now I'm the little John of the show, and I can't even be a star.
Hey, I like
Whatever.
that. It's a compliment.
I guess I'm gonna go find a big piece of wood. Amy, this has been so much fun. I'm so excited for people to get out and read this book. It's called The Traitor of Sherwood Forest. I have it. Other people should have it. This is so cool. Thank you so much for being on today.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that's a wrap here at Historians of the Movies podcast. Thank you so very much to our guest, Amy Kaufman, for coming in today. Amy, you were amazing. This book is amazing. I hope you guys go check it out. It's called The Traitor of Sherwood Forest. Thank you, of course, to Fletcher Powell, our producer, for making this show go. And of course, thank you most of all to all of you for continuing to show up every single week to share this podcast with your friends, your enemies, the kings and queens, and all the other places. So we've got so many more pods coming up for you soon. Ciao for now. Bye.